Has anyone seen Lockie Galvin? Has anyone seen Phil Gould? Has anyone seen James Graham? Has anyone seen Cameron Ciraldo? Has anyone seen Jason Taylor? Has anyone seen Lockie Galvin? Has anyone seen Phil Gould? Has anyone seen Bulldogs Instagram? Has anyone seen the kennel? Has anyone seen Phil Gould? Has anyone seen Lockie Galvin? Steve and Garry, welcome to West Tigers podcast 424.
Holy smokes, what a start. That's amazing. That was totally unrehearsed. Well done.
Yeah, I think we should just cut the pod there and we just release that.
Now, I'll explain that. No one will understand that, but I follow TalkSport over in the UK and their late night show. This is a late night show. They do that to wind up an opposition. And I thought, what better way, boys, going into a bye week, a little bit of light-hearted banter, get one over the enemy, Garry. I mean, Sunday night we did the collab podcast and Rob told me to behave. I mean, of all people to tell me to behave. So I've saved it for Wednesday night, this.
Well, and I had to listen to the West Tigers podcast, and I can tell you, Steve Stredden didn't behave when he got on Monday night when he started talking about Lockie Galvin. He gave him a right royal serve, which I quite enjoyed.
Steve,
Yeah, I may have already spilled my beans. I didn't know this was coming.
Steve, I was standing and applauding when I got to that point because it was very, you might notice, there's a very different level of maturity and humility in hosts compared to Monday night to tonight. But I was standing and applauding with your Galvin rant. And I thought, in all seriousness, it was a very, very strong podcast for you boys. But I was happy that you ripped in with about 8 minutes to go.
Well, you know,
You don't get many opportunities, do you?
No, and he deserved it, right? And it could have gone the other way. Galvin could have played the house down, and we'd all be sulking because of that.
But he didn't, Steve.
No, he didn't. He didn't want to. He didn't want to go near the football. You know, not only was he absent, he actually dogged it in that whole game, and I exemplified it in that last pod. But I'm really glad he dogged it. As I kept telling the bench over and over and over again that maybe they should put Toby Sexton on.
The key part of it for me, Steve, and you mentioned it on Sunday night, is his lack of engagement of the line. Now, a strength of his game while he was playing for us was his running game and he's playing through contact and his ball playing through contact and kicking close to the line. All that disappeared on the weekend. And to be fair, it has disappeared a little bit for a couple of weeks since he went to the Dogs. But I thought we would have seen a guy that engaged the line a little bit more than we did see on Sunday night. And maybe it's the broken hand or the injured wrist or the injured ankle. But, mate, he didn't go anywhere near our defensive line on Sunday.
Yeah, and I honestly think it was the at the game, the guy doing the camera work at the game, like focusing on him before kickoff, like that was obviously done on purpose because they went to him about 5 times before actual kickoff started. Like once they get out in the field, and you know, as we all saw, the crowd were booing and carrying on, and he was rattled. He was absolutely rattled. Then for the first 20 minutes. Luai was brilliant. Luai just kept feeding the ball to Samuela, who just charged at him time and time and time again. And he was off his game. He didn't want to know about it.
So the crowd was booing. It wasn't just Rach who happened to end up in the Daily Telegraph on Monday booing Lockie Galvin. It was the whole crowd.
Not just Rach, but she made a good fist of it. Let me tell you, I was sitting next to her.
Alrighty, boys, a little bit of a different midweek podcast. There's no quiz, Steve, so you'll be just very disappointed about that.
Mortified.
And no game to preview, but we will jump around a little bit all over the place. Probably wouldn't have done a podcast Wednesday night if we didn't beat the Bulldogs, Garry, but I'm in a good mood this week, as you might have noticed. So,
mate, this has been one of the best weeks of my year. Just woke up on Monday happy, woke up on Tuesday happy, woke up today happy, and then I found out I was doing a pod with you guys and the depression hit.
Then you had to tell Happy to get out of your bed.
Wow.
Alrighty, boys. Well, there was a lot of banter and drama at the game, and you guys touched on it maybe a little bit on Monday night, Steve, with Joel and Nick. Me and Garry didn't touch on it Sunday because we didn't really know anything about it, but the Tigers' last try celebration, it's obviously been all over the media, the clickbait the last couple of days, but Here's a talking point. Official warnings for the two Fainu brothers and a fine for Brent Naden. Gary, was that a fair result?
It's hard to really know. I'm not of Arabic descent. If you've ever seen me, I'm as as white and pale skin as they come. Um, but so I'm not going to tell people what they should be offended by when I don't know anything about the sign. So it is a hard one for me to sit here and kind of judge people who are offended by it. But everyone I've spoken to who is from that culture doesn't really have too much of an issue with the sign. I will admit most of them are Tigers supporters, so they may be a little bit biased in that regard. But there's a Ricky Gervais saying that I always go back to: just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. And look, I don't know enough about the sign itself to really have much of a say. But if the reports of it being a little bit of an up yours and that sort of stuff is true, then I don't have too much of a problem with it.
Well, I have been practicing the sign at home all week. It's a little bit difficult to execute. My ring finger doesn't quite, go where it's meant to. But anyway, but Steve, I mean, even the mainstream's been a little bit all over the shop with it. And you listen to guys like I listen to Braithen Astor, and he'd obviously have a lot of Lebanese friends. And even when I went to school, I had lots of Lebanese friends. I know it was a different era, but they're quite playful and light-hearted, and they are, in your face. But I think the NRL actually used good discretion here. I thought usually, the Panthers trainer, it was things blow up and they react to that. I think this time they actually came to the right decision.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a warning to the players on field, it was a correct reaction from the NRL. I thought Naden needed to be treated a little bit differently. Like apparently it was a private post, and then from that it became public. But he needs to know better than that, right? He needs to know what can happen. That anything you put up there can end up out in the public sphere, as it did, right? So yeah, he does need to be. But like I suppose I've got a slightly different take on it, and that's from the club perspective. And you probably know what I'm going to say because I'm a little bit old fashioned in this regard. I don't like the try celebration stuff. I just like players to, score a try, get back halfway, do it again, stay disciplined, do it again. Right? That's my mindset. So I didn't like what Luai did and what Taruva did with the Galvin stuff. I thought that inflamed a already hot situation and made it a lot worse. I copped a lot of flack for that because
I was on your side with
oh,
that.
you were actually, yeah. But most people said to me, "Oh, Luai's was all right. Taruva's was over the line." I actually thought they both crossed the line, and I think they did the same. Like the Canterbury Bankstown supporters are probably the most passionate, and you could say argumentative and aggressive, but they're supporters, right? Supporters is different to the players on the field, and I just don't think they should be doing that sort of stuff. And I think our club behind closed doors should really be reading the riot act and saying this is not acceptable. It's not the standard. We've brought unwanted attention to ourselves. It's not the look we want. And there'll be a lot of people probably saying, "Oh, yeah, you've been too serious with it." But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Steve, you and I were sitting at the Parramatta game at CommBank Stadium earlier in the year. Our home game. I can't remember which one it was. It was the Easter Monday game, and there were some West Tigers fans absolutely giving it to the bench of Parramatta, and the Parramatta players were actually standing up and almost to the point of calling the supporters down to have, let's say, a heated discussion with them, but it would have been more than that. That got to that level, and we didn't see any news reports about it. We didn't see any articles about it. And that was players getting to the point where they were yelling abuse and calling players down. And I'm not justifying the behavior. The behavior from the West Tigers supporters who were shouting the abuse at the Parramatta players that we heard was was way out of line, to the point that I actually contacted the club and put in a complaint about that behavior. But the Parramatta players on that occasion were actually aggressive towards fans, and we didn't hear a word about it. So I think there's a little bit of a case of double standards here. I I know that it was a very visible thing and it was players actually on the field, and it probably got more media due to that. But we didn't hear boo about Parramatta players getting into verbal arguments with fans in the stands on Easter Monday.
I, I don't want to rap journo, Steve, but I actually thought there was a good article. I don't know if it was today or yesterday by Michael Chammers, who is of Arabic descent, who sort of played it down. Who said, and I even saw, I know it's player to player, but I saw a photo of Jacob Carraz greeting Adam Doueihi but in the warm up with the same gesture and
Mm.
laughing, and they're two Lebanese guys. So I know that's player to player, and I know inciting the crowd is always dangerous territory. But I think in the context of West Tigers, I know I get what you're saying where, you score a try and I think rather than, walk back to halfway and concentrate, at least celebrate with your teammates, not celebrate with the crowd. That's what we try and do in cricket is encourage you to celebrate with your teammates. Don't go on an individual celebration by yourself. But in the context of what Canterbury have done to us and their supporters, like let's remember, Cameron Ciraldo knocked us back last year. We had that over the line. They've taken our best young player. Phil Gould is Phil Gould, and the Bulldogs fans would have been antagonising them for 75 minutes. Brent Naden, yes, he went over the line with the Instagram post. I will say those Instagram posts by Taruva and Naden go to, it's called, it's a green circle on Instagram. They go to your close mates. They're obviously not very close mates because one of them's sending it on to someone who sends it on to the media. So hopefully they've learnt a lesson by that. But what I'm saying is, I reckon if I scored that try, Steve, and I hope I'm never out there, but if I scored that try, I might have considered doing the same thing because these people are humans. They're emotional. And I think this will create a really big rivalry. And the NRL will be licking their lips about that.
Mate, I can't argue with any of that. That's everything you've said makes perfect sense. And I can't be hypocritical either because I was extremely emotional on the weekend and given it too. But it was lighthearted. Right? It was lighthearted. But I just think, I suppose my only point is this: as a club, as a team, we lack discipline. We lack discipline on the field. You could say we lack discipline across the club historically. I just hope that we respect the need for discipline. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and look, I'm being a party pooper, and I can't argue with you, Eddie. You make a lot of sense. But I would just like to see us be a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more reserved, I suppose.
Okay. Well, I just think look out for those two games next year because they will. The reason I'm getting my shots in now is I know they're going to respond, Canterbury. They're a strong club with a
Oh,
great
yeah.
fan base. They're like a really great fan base. And if they had done that to us, I wouldn't have gone and complained to the NRL. If I was a fan, I would have just said, well, it's their day. Good luck to them. Carry on how you like. But, boys, let's stop talking about that. Let's go to Adam Doueihi because he has been in the news again. Gary, he had an outstanding game, obviously, on Sunday. Rumours that the Tigers, or it was quotes actually from Shane Richardson on Monday, that there is a 2-year deal now on the table. And Richo said that's our final offer. There's no deadline on it, but it'll be up to Adam. Where do you think this is going to end up?
Well, apparently the Dragons are about 150,000 more a season than we are. They're apparently at about 500,000 for each of the 2 years, and we're at 350. For where we stand as a club and what Adam has shown for us over the last couple of years, I think that's about the right offer. I'd go to probably 400,000, but I don't think at this point in time we're a club that can really go much higher than that. Um, and I don't want to take any credit away from what he did on the weekend. I thought he was fantastic on the weekend. But we have seen these sort of games from him in the past, and the consistency in that sort of role has been the issue for him in the past. To go much higher than that, I want to see him playing at that level regularly, and we just haven't seen that from him yet. And that's to take nothing away from his last month of football. His last month of football has been excellent.
It's tough, Steve. I mean, I sort of change my opinion on Adam Doueihi every week, or every 3 weeks for the last year. But I know you like your cricket, so I just like use a little cricket analogy. Like he's a really good footballer. And when I say cricketers are really good cricketers, it's not because they're good at one skill. It's because they're good at several skills with fielding, bowling, batting. Like Adam Doueihi has proved this year, he can be a decent centre. He could be a decent lock. He can be good in the halves. He could be good off the bench. Like, to me, the way the game's going, that sort of player, maybe it is worth more than 350,000 a year.
Yeah, I think it is. And the one thing you haven't mentioned there that I think is hard to put a value on, but he's a Tiger, right? He loves the jersey. He loves the club. He supported the team when he was younger. And there's something in that. When we've had a season where blokes have said they don't want to be part of the club and walked out on us, to have a bloke who actually wants to be there and his preference is to stay, whether he'll stay for less, I don't know, right? There's got to be some value placed on that, though. That we're trying to build something, and he does have the sort of mindset and attitude and love for the club and the jersey that we're looking for. It is a hard one. I'm probably agreeing with both of you. I think he's worth more than 350. Is he worth 500? No, probably not. Would I pay up to 500? Probably close from what I've seen. But more than from what I've seen, it's the versatility that he's providing now. That's where his value is, not his last month of footy or his last game on the weekend. It's that versatility that he could play 13 for us. He can jump in at 7 or 6 if we need it. And if it's game specific, as I said the other night, he can play 14 for us if he's got the attitude for it. He's a pretty important guy in the roster, actually, when you look at it like that, if he can maintain his form.
A couple of things, Steve. He has now called out Shane Richardson at least once in regard to his contract negotiations. And for me, that's not a guy that necessarily shows his love for the club in the correct manner. Like going into press conferences and saying you'll have to speak to Richo about my contract and all those sort of comments, I don't think is a really good look. And at this point, I think there's a couple of positions he could slide into in our squad next year. And if he's continuing the halves continues, one of those is potentially the number 7 jersey.
Mm.
But at this point, he doesn't own any of those spots. And I'm of the belief that with Appy at the point in his career he is, that 14 needs to be someone who can play hooker. And I don't think Adam can do that role for us. So if he doesn't fit into that 13 spot, if he doesn't fit into that 7 spot, then he is a backup in all of those positions. And I think would get plenty of games because he can play so many different positions. And pretty much any time we have an injury, he comes into that squad. But I just don't know where he fits into that squad for next year. And that's why I'm reluctant to go 500,000 or higher, because I just don't know where he fits at this point in time.
I think your point on his attitude's a good one, but we know that about Adam Doueihi. We know that's what we're going to get from him, and he probably comes across a lot more or a lot ruder than it's probably meant to. I dislike totally those times he said, "I'm a 6, and if I don't get 6, I'm not interested." Right? Yeah, that sort of attitude is terrible. But I think that's part of the whole package with him. I think he believes in himself, and he's got such a strength of character in going out there to prove himself. He does back himself, and he doesn't shy away from blokes like Richo. Like a lot of people would run away from Richo. He's a pretty scary sort of dude, right? But I don't think Adam Doueihi would. And I think Adam would say, well, come on, Richo, show us what you got type thing. That's Adam Doueihi. I'm not defending him really, because I tend to agree with you, but I don't know. I've just seen enough from him to think he's worth having in our squad. I'd do it at around. I'd pay 450. I'd go to 450. I reckon.
100%. I want him here next year. I think like a month ago, I would have been happy with that 1 year deal at around the 350,000. And at that point, a lot of people were ready to just let him go. I'm actually quite happy they've extended that to a year based on the form that he has shown over the last month. But there has to be that kind of limit somewhere. And I think if he can get especially a half spot at 500,000 at the Dragons, I think that's a very hard offer to kind of match.
But they're not offering him a half spot.
They're not.
That's the sticking point. They've told him
he
he'll
potentially
be
has
13.
a half spot here. So he potentially has a half spot here, but it's a little bit less money. So I guess there's a decision there for him to make.
In fairness to the Tigers and Richo, Steve, like I'm just looking at it. Adam Doueihi's been with the club since 2020, so this is his sixth season. Now he's played 83 games, and my rough math says total amount of games in 6 years is about 150. So he's played just over 50% of the games. Obviously, it's not his fault he's getting injured, but the club has to look at things like that. If you've had three ACLs and you're only 26 years of age, the chances of doing another one again, I'd say, are still relatively high.
Yeah, well, I heard, I don't know how correct this is. I just heard in conversation that when he went to the Dragons before, he failed a
Failed a
medical
medical.
that they did with him, So there is that, and the club's got to weigh that, and we don't know that sort of stuff. We're only speculating, right?
Well, it's
We
interesting.
speculate.
I'll just jump in, Steve. It was interesting. I was listening to Phil Gould's podcast tonight, and I mean, he looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. But anyway, he was talking about Adam Doueihi, and he actually sort of let slip that Adam Doueihi had emailed the Bulldogs a few years ago offering his services because obviously he was his own manager, and he said he was offering himself for a lot more than he is now. And he said that the Bulldogs actually got mail that he was very susceptible to an ACL then. I mean, he could just be talking crap, Phil Gould, but he was basically saying we thought he was going to get injured. He did then go on to do his ACL. So it's like you wonder what sort of background information there is from clubs out there because it's not like there's 7 or 8 clubs sort of in the mix bidding against each other at the moment. It's probably a slightly desperate St George.
And that's going to impact, the negotiations, isn't it? Maybe the club's got that in the back of their mind. Maybe they're privy to information. Maybe it's just maybe 350 is a smart move by the club.
And if you have a look at his form on the weekend and most of his form over the last month, if he was playing at that level consistently, he's that level player of the money he was asking 3 or 4 years ago, which is the $800,000 plus. That's if he was playing how he played on Sunday regularly and showing that every week, that's what he would be worth. And there, his contract of before the one of the ACL injuries was around that mark. He was up around that 700, 800,000. So he does have the potential to be that sort of player. He just hasn't shown it enough for me.
There's an argument, Steve, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm going to make an argument that he could be he's our player of the year. I know the obvious pick is, Terrell May and Taruva's been great and Buller's been great, but I'm just looking through the games. I don't think we beat Cronulla if we don't have Adam Doueihi. Obviously, he kicked that penalty goal in overtime. I don't think we beat the Roosters without Adam Doueihi, who was a late inclusion to the halves, had a blinder that day. We certainly don't beat the Titans without Adam Doueihi. Kicks a field goal with 10 seconds to go. And maybe we would have beat the Dogs without him, but he was the best player by the length of the straight. So that's 4 games where I'd argue, we've only won 8, that he has been the difference in those games.
Yeah, I think we were all really concerned about Adam Doueihi when we were coming to the beginning of this season. Defensively, he'd shown a real lack of application and desire to get his shoulder in there and defend consistently well. He's turned that around this year. His attack, the speed he showed, like in the wet, picking up that loose ball, those 2 runs, right, to get away, he showed some great speed. So, I don't know what he's done. He's been working on his game, got himself super fit. Not sure what it is. Maybe it's a bit of mindset as well. But he has had a different attitude and application this year, and it's shown. He's been a very good footballer. And just listening to you rattle those off, I think you're pretty close to being right. Like he's had a lot of impact for us. And at the end of the day, we've said that we tend to lack a bit of impact, and he's a guy who has provided it.
Talking about his speed, Eddie's a gamble. He'll know some horses are just mud runners. And I think he may just be a little bit of a mud runner because his pace was reasonable on the weekend. But talking about that change of application in defence, I think the biggest thing that highlights that for me, Steve, is the Gold Coast, not the Gold Coast, the Bulldogs' last try on the weekend. His effort to get back there and almost save that try.
Yeah.
I don't think we see that from him last year or the year before.
Mm.
He's never really been that player that really chases down a ball like that or chases a guy that's made a break. And that's the big change in what I've seen in him this season is that application to effort plays. It's always been the effort plays that I've had concerns about before this season, and credit where credit's due, he's improved that massively this season.
And something else from the weekend too, and Nick pointed this out on Sunday night
I'm
when.
not going to listen then.
Well, I'll steal it. This is actually
Good
mine.
one-liners, Nick, on Sunday night.
He he mentioned the team getting into a huddle before they went off at half time, and Doueihi was commanding the conversation. And it's not the fact that he spoke; it's the fact that Luai and Appy let him speak. Right? If they didn't respect him, they'd have just jumped in and talked over him. Right? That's the way it works. If you don't respect the bloke, if the other team members aren't going to listen to the guy, they're not going to let him talk. But they let him have his say, and so it shows that the team, that 17, really respect him, and that's a positive as well.
It wasn't just that either, though, Steve. After the game, he was getting his pictures taken with Luai and Taruva, and Luai and Taruva were actually praying in the center of the field, and Adam Doueihi joined them in that as well, just the three of them. And there's been a little bit of a narrative around the club in certain parts about a little bit of a concern around the Pacifica kind of clique that may be forming in the club. Having a look at Adam Doueihi on the weekend, he didn't look to be on the outside of any clique at our club.
I saw Josh Reynolds' quote, Steve. Uh, sorry, it was Justin Horro's quotes, and he was talking about Josh Reynolds because they do a show together, a podcast, and they were talking about Adam Doueihi, and Josh Reynolds basically said there's no way Adam Doueihi will want to be a lock full time. So I think if that's St George's plan, I think he still might stay at the Tigers because I think he'll look at this last month, and I reckon he won't make a decision till the end of the year because it's clear he's playing for a contract and he's adding value to his contract every week the way he's going. He's playing really desperately and he's playing good football, but he'll be looking at the next 4 weeks and going, no reason if we can't keep winning, 4 out of the last 5, and I start at halfback, that my dollars might go up a bit more, and I could potentially be the halfback of either the Tigers or the Dragons.
Yeah, as long as he's prepared to accept the fact that Latu Fainu could shoot the lights out and then take the spot, which puts him to 13.
Hard to shoot the lights out from the bench, though.
Well, it is, but he's shown that he's got it, and I think Benji has a lot of respect for him and is bringing him along at the pace that Benji thinks correct. So, I think there's a potential that he'll get frustrated at the Dragons, but I'm saying I think there's potential that he could be frustrated for the same reasons here. But, he'd probably get a better shot at it here. I don't know that Flanagan's going to let his son out of number 7.
You think there'll be a decision in the next month, Gary? I think it might just slide on to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think if he got the offer he wants from us, I think he'd probably decide fairly quickly. So I think, as he has said, that ball's probably in Shane Richardson's court a little bit. And I agree with you. Like everything we've heard from him, I don't see him going to the Dragons to play 13 if he can get something else. So I think what happens next really depends on what we do as a club. And if he gets a slight increase on that offer, that may be enough for him to sign straight up. I think it's a little bit of a wait and see, and comes down ultimately to what Shane Richardson decides to do.
This World Series rugby or whatever it is, Steve, it could be the fly in the ointment. I've been reading a bit about it. It seems quite mysterious, but anything backed by the Saudi investment fund or whatever they are, they bankroll anything.
Yeah, well, there'd be some dollars in it, and there's also one team coming in and then another team coming in, then another team coming in. So there's not going to be any shortage of offers out there for decent NRL players over the next couple of years, that's for sure.
All right, boys, let's move from Adam Doueihi. Talk a little bit of recruitment. Gary, there was some news dropping today. I think it's actually confirmed on the West Tigers Instagram that Maverick Guy, son of Mark Guy, has signed for the club for 1 year, is it, or 2?
It's a 1 year deal, I believe. So, yeah, for next year. Apparently, he wasn't offered a contract at all from Penrith and is moving across to the West Tigers next year. He's always been a player I thought had a little bit of potential. He's still quite young, so depending on the contract, as long as it's the right contract, I'm not too disappointed with it. You and I did have a conversation earlier about depth players, but I think he's he's a player that will possibly provide some depth for the club and mostly spend his time in playing for the Magpies.
I think he debuted about a year ago. I just remember him having that huge
Yeah.
contingent of mates out at might have been Allianz or something, Steve. But still, pieces of the jigsaw you'd like to think with recruitment to come. We know, November, December when cricket's playing, there's things can drop out of the tree. Terrell May did last year, so probably got to keep something up your sleeve for that because salary cap squeeze can happen at some clubs.
Yeah, we need someone to drop out of the tree that's going to make a huge thump, right? We need that big front row. We need that elite middle player to sign with the club. Don't know where he's going to come from, but gee, we need him. Yeah, the Maverick guy one, I think it's a good signing. Um, our back row is still going to be untested next year. I think Samuel Fainu is showing that he's got the goods to be good, the second rower. I don't know about Pierce Paul yet. I've seen a couple of good games from him at Newcastle. It'll just be, let's see how he goes. But to have a backup there of Maverick Guy, I saw him play earlier in the year and he looked okay without looking overly damaging. There's supposed to be
Look,
another guy coming as well, isn't there?
yeah, Guy from the Roosters as well. But the thing with Guy is I think he's an upgrade on guys we have in the top 30 at the moment, like Tumif. So I'd much rather have someone like Maverick Guy playing in our lower grades than Brendan Tumif.
Okay. Yeah, there was a post, I don't know, it might just be a Facebook post, says the West Tigers have taken advantage of the back row squeeze at the Roosters by landing one of the club's most promising forwards. Understood 20-year-old Ethan Roberts has agreed to a 2-year deal with the Tigers from next season, where he will join the club alongside Penrith back rower Maverick Guy. So, again, a player that maybe Declan or some of the guys that watch the lower grades regularly might know a little bit about. But Gary, it seems like it's still like even I read something about Charlie Murray. We re-signed him. I don't think it was a top 30 contract, but I read something online that the Tigers are shopping him around. 3 weeks after they signed him, I get the same feeling with Tristan Hope. We signed him, and I'm thinking, should we have done that?
Yeah, I was a bit perplexed by both those signings at the time, but Charlie Murray's manager has come out in the last 24 hours and said it's not true that the Tigers aren't shopping him around. So I don't really know what's going on there. I could see a situation where he's on a development contract next year, and if one of the Super League clubs came in and offered him a good contract, then I could see why the Tigers may say let him go for a better opportunity, even despite having signed him like weeks ago. But like I'm not too fussed either way. If he's here on a development contract, I'm okay with that. He's a fairly old player to really be using one of your development spots on. But if they were to release him to go play elsewhere, I don't really have too much of an issue with that either because I don't. If he's seeing a lot of first grade next year, then we're in trouble. The thing I do like about Gaia and the other rumored signing is second row, despite us bringing in Kai Pierce Paul, it is still an area where we lack depth. It's an area where as soon as we get an injury, we're in trouble. So bringing in a couple other guys to kind of improve that area depth wise, I think is a pretty smart idea.
Well, Steve, I've been in the lab. I've been doing my homework, and I've just gone through the West Tigers players off contract at the end of 2025 and 2026. We'll start with the 2025 ones. Just give me a simple yes or no, or I'll give you 150-50 if you're on the fence, whether you would re-sign these players. Adam Doueihi,
Yes.
Josh Fellerty,
No.
Justin Matamua,
No.
Brent Naden.
50-50 leaning towards no.
My new favourite player, Brent Naden. Charlie Staines.
How happy were you when he was named on the weekend?
I was horrified. But after his celebration against the Bulldogs, I just find the fact that Brent Naden, like he's a troll, Steve, and I'm a troll. So that's why I like him because he has been in reserve grade all year and he managed to antagonise an entire fan base. So well done, Brent Naden, even though I don't think you should be playing for the West Tigers next year.
But
Charlie,
but Eddie, were you happy with what he produced on the field on the
he
weekend?
did fine. He
He
did
did. He
fine.
did
Like
his.
I
He
think
did his
the
job.
I think the swimming pool conditions probably help him. Like
Yeah.
on a dry track against Manly with Kohler in the centres, I'd be horrified. Like what he could do to Brent Naden, but he didn't let us down on the weekend. No doubt he's got ability, but he's just never, like you said it Monday night, Steve. He's never been consistent throughout his career, and some of his off-field antics has been part of the reason, I'm sure. Charlie Staines,
No,
Brandon Tumeth,
no.
all right, Gary. These are the guys off contract at the end of 2026, and I want you to say if, say you get to November this year where they'd be free to negotiate, whether you would extend them or whether 50-50 or whether you'd put them through the shredder now. Jack Bird,
No.
Sione Fainu,
Oh, 100% yes.
extension,
Yeah. I'd extend him tomorrow.
Tristan Hope,
No.
Kitla Lilly.
That's a hard one. I'm at this point. I'm leaning to no because I don't think he's shown quite enough.
All right, I'll stay with you, Gary, for the rest of them. And Steve, you can jump in at the end if you disagree with Gary on any of them. Luke Lilly,
Yes, I'd keep him.
Heath Mason,
No,
Solomon Sudoku.
no. Despite him being on my trivia team at a West Tigers function,
I
no.
don't even know who that is. He's not in the top 30, is he?
Yeah, he is. He has been for a couple of years.
Wow.
He was a development player a couple of years ago. I think he's now in the top 30.
Steve's smiling at something.
Good prep, Eddie.
Um, Gerard Skelton,
Uh, yes,
Tony Suka,
no. Though I think he does have potential.
Stafford Toa.
That's a. I I will say yes now, but I'd like to see him play a little bit more before the end of the year, to see whether those defensive issues are going to kind of continue and whether his lack of potency in attack the last few weeks will improve. So, yes, I would, but yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about it.
Steve, any issues with what Gary said then?
No issues with that at all. But I do want to just mention Tristan Hope and bring it up again. I just don't get it. I just cannot see the reason. And I just wrote down here as you guys were talking the impact a bloke like Jacob Little and Billy Walters have. Both
Yeah,
those guys have for their respective teams at the moment.
Bench hooker's a big spot
Yeah,
for
when they
some
come
teams.
on, yeah, and play that 20, 25 minutes or either side of halfway or however they choose to do it. Like Billy Walters plays less than half a game, and I would argue that could pick up man of the match half the time he goes out there. The impact that guy has when he goes out there for the Broncos, and I just don't understand. Like I know we don't know everything, but we've let go of a bloke who said he wanted to stay, had that sort of impact, but wanted to start. I get that. For a guy that, to me, is fill in at absolute best, I'm really concerned about that for next year.
yeah. I don't want Appy. I think we've spoken about it a lot over the last couple of years, and I think we were saying it last year. We don't really want Appy playing 80 minutes a game. I think there's some weeks where you need him to. I think there's certain games you go into, you want to have a slightly different bench rotation,
And this
and you
this
don't.
one, Gary, like was perfect. Big game leading into a
Correct.
bye.
Yep.
Yep. You playing a pack like the Dogs, you want that extra forward there. So there's certain weeks where you're playing him 80 minutes. But there's some weeks where you don't like, there's a lot of weeks you don't want to be playing him 80 minutes. You want to be playing him 60 minutes. And all Hope really provides you is a body to give Appy a rest. That's it. I want someone who can come on and have some impact. And I watched that Penrith game. Steve and I went out to it. No, Steve wasn't there. I went out to the Penrith game at Combank, and Appy, just before he came off, was getting really tired and starting to fall off tackles, and he needed a break. The problem was we put Hope on, and he was falling off more tackles than Appy was when he was dead tired after playing a really high impact game where he actually played his heart out for 60 minutes. The guy that came on to replace him was playing worse, and I don't want to lose something when Appy goes off. I know we're not going to have Appy on the field, but someone with a bit of speed around the ruck, someone who can provide some point of difference other than just being a warm body, so Appy can go sit on the bench for 20 minutes. I think we need more than that.
My last little bit of research I did, Steve, just for you tonight. I went through the 2025 off contract, and it's slim pickings, but I'm going to give you three answers. You can say none, you can say slight, or you can say yes. What do you say if you have any interest in some of these players? Might not have heard of some of them, but anyway. Felice Kafusi.
Felice Kafusi. Slight.
From the Knights, Adam Elliott and Tyson Frizzell.
Adam Elliott, yes. Tyson Frizzell, no.
David Clemmer.
No.
Gary,
Bateman?
last year,
That would be a West Tigers move, though, wouldn't it? Release him 1 year and sign him back the
Clemmer. I
next.
think the UK is calling Mr. Clemmer, even though he's had a very good career. Gary, Mark Nichols and the Dolphins.
No.
Takiaho from Manly. I know he's old, but he's been playing all right for them up front.
Yeah, I'd consider it for 1 year.
And I can't read the writing of the last one, so we're not going to bother with that. But boys, like you said, Steve, I think maybe the strategy, I don't know if it's a wise strategy, it came off last year. Maybe the strategy is to wait and see, because do you still think we are two middles short of being a potential top eight side next year?
Yeah, I think we're two dynamic forwards short. And you could say two middles. You could still say one middle, one edge player. I'm just throwing this name out there, the first one I say, but like Kickout, for example, the impact that guy has on a football game, I'd just go there. We've got to have tons of money, right?
There's been rumours about him a little bit that he could be one of them that gets squeezed out, especially with the Penrith connection.
Well, mate, if that was the case, I would be onto him so quickly. Wouldn't be funny. We've got to have a war chest of money somewhere, right? Because we haven't spent it yet. And I'd be finding anyone I could that might be semi-interested in coming to this club and throwing a ton of money at them. And absolutely the middle, and I'd be happy to say two middles, or if not two middles, then one middle and an edge back rower that was going to be dynamic. That's the thing.
The one thing that gives me a little bit of hope moving into the off-season, the recruitment, is I think we've been pretty good at picking up players who have fallen out of clubs in the past 12 months, mainly the two Mays. But I think we've done a very good job when a guy in an area of need has come loose at a club, we've got him across. And I think we've done well using Jerome Luai in that situation. And once Terrell was here, we used Terrell to get his brother here. And I know those were probably beneficial circumstances for us, but that's what those circumstances are when a guy falls out of a club. And I'm hopeful that we can kind of pick up someone that the right person falls out of a club and we can pick them up for next season. Hopefully, as Steve said, a nice big front rower who can play some decent minutes but cause some impact through the middle of the field.
Taylor May, Steve, it's a tricky one. I watched his podcast today with his brother. Quite an intense podcast if you get to watch it in the next couple of weeks. But that's a bit of a tricky one for the club, because he could now, the Tigers have taken the hit and give him a training trial, and he's proved that he's clearly a very good NRL player. So there could be 7 or 8 clubs in for him. We might get a little bit of a brother discount, but we might not. Do you have a figure on what we should offer May and how many years, or it's hard to know?
Yeah, I think clubs are going to come after him for sure. I don't think he's a huge risk to leave. I think he's pretty cemented to Benji and the opportunity that Benji has given him. He said
spoke highly of him on the podcast.
Yeah, I had to listen to it as well. He loves playing with his brother, and they mentioned that they'd love to get the third brother from the UK across as well. So I think he's pretty glued into the club. As far as how much and for how long, a couple of year contract I'd offer him. I don't know. What do you pay a centre, like a dynamic centre like him? Is he up around the 500,000 mark. I don't know. I'm guessing. I don't know what they're worth. But I'd pay him good money because he's going to be an impactful player for us. The thing with that worries me, and listening to that podcast, is I don't. I just don't know how rock solid he's going to be. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go off the rails pretty easily, right? Like he
He
just
mentioned he mentioned just how sore his body was, which was interesting. Like I think Gary and a couple of you have said, were surprised he got to first grade so early, but having been out of contact for so long, and I think he's probably, I know it was really difficult conditions, Gary, for any outside backs on the weekend, but I think he's probably the last couple of weeks it might have just hit him a little bit that this has all come pretty quickly.
Yeah, mate, he played a game and a half of reserve grade.
Mm.
So he'd played a game and a half in about 2 years before he made his debut for us. So um, I would expect him to be sore because it doesn't matter how hard you train off the field. The physical toll your body goes through on the field is completely different to anything you can replicate at home by yourself. And he was at home by himself. So yeah, I don't think that side of it's surprising, but I think Steve's exactly right. No matter what way you paint it, it's still not a risk-free signing. So I think there's got to be a little bit of probably a discount with that kind of in mind that you are still taking a risk on this guy. He's not that far out of the troubles he had in the past, and I think he's making a really strong goal of turning them around. And I've seen bits and pieces of that podcast, and I liked how open and honest he was about his issues. And the first thing you have to do to kind of get past those issues, and you don't have to be open and honest on a pod like he was, but being open and honest with yourself about where you are as a person and where you are in life is really crucial. And he seems to have that. So hopefully he can make a fist of this opportunity because another big stuff up, he probably doesn't get another opportunity. So fingers crossed for him.
Yeah, and I'd echo those remarks. Fingers crossed for the guy because he does come across as a really likable guy who wants to get his act together. The opposite could be true as well. Like this could be the best thing that's
Yeah,
ever happened
100%.
for him. Like to be playing with his brother, and it's obvious that there's a strong bond there. To be playing for a coach that he respects, to be in amongst a group of mates that he really gets on with and feels a part of. He says every day is a challenge for him. That every getting up and being happy and content is a challenge. So maybe the West Tigers is that safe place for him. Maybe the West Tigers is exactly what he needs, and I really hope it is. Because I'd love to see, obviously for the club's perspective, I'd love to see it. But just listening to him, I'd love to see it for him too.
Yeah, I think that's crucial for him, Steve. He may not get the support that he has at the West Tigers at another club. The leaders of our team, like he's got his brother there who's known him all his life, but the other leaders in our team, guys like Appy, um, Jerome Loy, these are all guys that have known him for a long time. So they're all from that Mount Druitt area. They all came through together. Not necessarily. He's a little bit younger than those guys, but his older brothers played with those guys as well. So he's been around those guys for a long time, and I don't know that he gets that support at another club from that long-term kind of base that he has with them. So I think this is probably the best place for him to be to get that opportunity to make those improvements that he's trying to make in his life.
Yeah, it was an interesting contrast because a lot of those Penrith boys, Gary, are, they're pretty loud and brash, and like Jerome and Appy and Taruva and even Terrell, his older brother, is a pretty, like he'll tell you what he thinks, whereas Talon struck me as very introverted, quite shy.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned before, like I used to teach in the Mount Druitt area. I've had interactions with the family for a long time, and he always came across as a little bit quieter than the other two boys. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I just think the interesting point out of that, though, Gary, is that they're both now going to church regularly, and they've sought solace in a whole lot of different areas, and it's taken them years and years and years, obviously, to get over the influence that you had on them at an early age, mate.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. One of them had to move to England to get away from it.
I've been going to church lately, Steve, as well.
Yeah, but praying to the footy gods.
Most people, but yeah. All right, boys. I think we'll leave it there because there's no game this weekend. There's no quiz, but what are you going to do with yourself, Steve, with no game on the weekend? I love bye weeks, especially coming off a win. It means I can be happy for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit and watch a whole lot of football games. But, now this ridiculous part of me starts
Here comes another rant, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. This ridiculous part of me starts to come out because we had one win, I'm now thinking we can make the 8. So now I'm watching every single game thinking...
Have you got that list of things that need to go our way?
Yeah.
You pinned that to your wall, haven't you, Steve?
Yeah, and look, if you'll just take me on for a minute, now I've got to go and hope that the Roosters beat the Dolphins. And I've never hoped that the Roosters beat anyone, ever. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. That's how I'm going to spend my weekend.
I can solve this for you, Steve. We're not making the 8.
You know what?
I know
what? If the Dolphins had lost on the weekend and those 3 teams were all on 9 wins, with our run home, the 9th place dream is alive, Steve. The 9th place dream is alive.
And he's been riding us all the way to the wooden spoon all season. We get one win, and he's looking right up.
I'll say it now. We will not get the wooden spoon. It's the first time I can confirm it this year, Steve. I've been like you, but I've been watching all the bottom teams all year, as you know.
That's really good, Andy, to say that's a real risk you've taken. It's like that bloke who said we couldn't take the game home. The guy said on the forum the other night that we couldn't take the game home. Mate, we were leading 28-8 with 60 seconds to go. I think we'd taken the game home.
But I'm, it's scarred supporters. I was the same as I'm sure many Tigers fans, Gary. When we scored the last try, 26-8, I'm thinking, please kick the goal, Doueihi, otherwise they could come back and beat us.
Yeah, Jordan was sitting behind me and said the exact same thing.
So, all right, boys. Well, it's been a joyous podcast tonight. We hope to be back Sunday night. Joel will be back, but good to have a weekend off and nice to celebrate a win. So thank you, boys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, boys.